engaging the community since 1970. This is WIS Awareness.
Good morning and thank you for joining us for Awareness. I'm your host, Megan Norman. With the Republican primary now over, the attention shifts to the Democratic primary. Recent South Carolina poll numbers show Hillary Clinton with a comfortable lead of almost 20 percentage points over Bernie Sanders. Nationally, the lead is larger, but Sanders has been gaining ground with key demographics. He had a strong showing in Iowa and a straight-out win in New Hampshire. But in South Carolina, for Democrats, the key is the all-important minority vote. Who can win it? Who is willing to fight for it? Joining me now are members of the South Carolina Legislative Black Caucus, Senator John Scott Jr. and Representative Caesar McKnight. Thank you both for being with us this morning.
Good to be with you this morning.
Good morning, Megan. How are you?
Good. Now, we know current and incoming chairman of the Black Caucus have endorsed Hillary Clinton.
Correct.
We know more than 20 members of the General Assembly have also done so. But where do the two of you stand?
Well, I'm a Hillary Clinton supporter. And I think when you check the numbers over in the Senate of the African American senators, most of them support Hillary Clinton. So pretty much the Democratic group in the Senate support Hillary Clinton.
And Mr. McKnight?
I'm totally feeling the burn. I'm all in for Senator Sanders.
And why is that? What to you separates him and puts him ahead of Hillary Clinton?
It's the authenticity of Senator Sanders that puts him ahead in my mind with Secretary Clinton. I've heard from several of my colleagues in the House that seem to make the statement that Bernie Sanders has only had 40 days of civil rights experience and that Secretary Clinton's had 40 years, and that's simply not true. We know that Senator Sanders has been on the front lines. He's marched with Dr. King. And when they mention Secretary Clinton's 40 years of experience, I wonder, does that include her harsh stance on federal sentencing and the sentencing of our young people, our black and brown people? I wonder, does that legacy factor in to their claims that she's been staunch on civil rights? Because quite frankly, I think it rings hollow.
Well, why are you an advocate of Hillary Clinton?
Well, first and foremost, when the race is all over and it's time to go to work, I need to have a candidate who can easily become president, who over the years have demonstrated having the experience on both international as well as domestic policies at home, one who understands how to deal with a Congress walking into it that may be pretty tough. We're hoping that the Democrats will win the Senate, so the president will have a little easier term, but just in case. We've seen a Congress that's been upside down. They don't agree on anything. And the challenge always, can we find someone who can work with them to at least be able to get some things done?
And you don't think Bernie Sanders' experience as senator would help him do that?
I don't. I think given where we are internationally with the ISIS and the Syrian, the war that's ongoing, it's a problem. It's a balancing act. Can we not make the same mistake we did prior to Obama coming in, being 3 different wars at one time and the economy was just shot? Can we also find a president who can live up to some of the promises and not lead young people down the road thinking that at the end of the day there's going to be this big pot of money and all your debt related to you being educated is going to be gone? That's just not the way it worked. When we look at the Parent Plus program and the challenges that the feds have had when they did away with that, and a number of students who had to drop out of school just because they couldn't get loan programs, and all of a sudden the federal government is going to come up with a program that's going to pay for everybody's education. And that, I can't even fathom nowhere in the world that's going to happen.
Go ahead.
There's a lot of things that I'm sure that Senator Scott can't fathom, or that people in the past could not have fathomed, that have come true. There was at one time when we couldn't fathom that we'd have a Social Security program that would take our elderly people off the streets and out of the homes, if they were lucky enough, of their loved ones, and give them the independence that they've had. There was a lot of people that thought or didn't think that we could have the Affordable Care Act, and we do. So simply because you can't foresee it doesn't necessarily mean it can't come to pass. It takes vision and it takes initiative, and I think that Senator Sanders dreams big, and I think that he has the work ethic and has demonstrated the ability to work in Congress to get it done. When we talk about national security, as Senator Scott has indicated, I think that Secretary Clinton falls short in that, because she is the one that voted for the war in Iraq that cost us the lives of thousands of Americans, that has put us deeper into financial debt, and that has brought us home hundreds of thousands of veterans that suffer from post-traumatic stress disorders and various illnesses. So I look back and I hear everyone talk about the experience of Secretary Clinton, but what good is your experience if you don't learn from it?
Okay, let's revisit the Affordable Care Act, which is called the Obamacare, which is really not an original Obama insurance policy for the people of the United States. It was born under the Clinton administration. It was Hillary Clinton who began that war with Congress.
That's not true.
Who began that war with Congress, and they were unable to pass it.
That's simply not true. We know that Obamacare is patterned off of the Heritage Association's health plan.
One thing I'm going to do.
Heritage Society.
One thing I'm going to do in front of these young people is demonstrate that we're intelligent enough in the General Assembly to be able to sit down and talk.
We are
talking. When it's your turn to talk, I'm going to be quiet. When it's mine, I appreciate the same thing.
Let me ask you this, though, because
Senator,
I want to talk about the voter base. I want to talk about minority voters and why it's important for minorities to come out and vote, because we know that Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders both are fighting for this minority vote.
Correct.
So why is it so important that we get young people and we get minorities to get out to the polls and vote, regardless of who you support?
Well, the base in South Carolina is about 33–35% African American. A large portion of that base is young voters. The new voters coming in are the ones who, in fact, that most of these candidates are going after, hoping that they can energize them, and on the 20th, they're able to turn out and vote for them. Most of the older voters in South Carolina, Democrat people of color, already have seen Hillary over the years, have locked into some of her ideas, the direction she wants to carry the country, and they're supporting her. And that's why there's a 20% voting margin. The Sanders campaign is hoping that they can make that vote up and close that gap with young voters.
Right. And do you think he can do that? I mean, clearly he's had the young people vote in Iowa and in New Hampshire, but can he do it here?
First, your question was, why is it important for young people to vote?
Yes.
It's important because it's voting that empowers them and shapes their community, not only in a presidential election, but in off-years elections as well. It's who you vote for. It gives you the ability to be on jury duty. It gives you the ability to decide who's going to be your local leaders. So it gives them the ability to shape their communities. Second, Senator Sanders has done phenomenal. When he first came into this race, when he first said that he was going to run for president, he had 7% of the vote. Now, we're out now and we're 20 points behind. His message is resonating. His message that the system is broke and that the banks have exploited our community, particularly the black community that suffered at the hands of the Great Recession, is resonating with people. They feel it. They know what it's like to be in an African American household and have half of their household wealth be destroyed during the Great Recession, to the point now where the average black household wealth is $9,000. And what's criminal about that, what's most damning about it, is that Secretary Clinton takes hundreds of thousands of dollars from Goldman Sachs and other banks, to the point where they have a joke about what they call it the Goldman handcuff, and that's what they have on Secretary Clinton.
But back to
this is going to be the last comment before we wrap up. I know this is a lot to discuss.
But back to your point, and those have been campaign issues. You know, very important. If you don't learn how to work with the major industry in this country, the Wall Street of this country, I can assure you we're not going to grow this country. No matter who you take money from, Hillary has demonstrated over and over again, I'm not afraid, because I accept their money, to be able to regulate them. And that's what this is all about. Unlike the Koch brothers who don't want to be regulated, Hillary is interested in regulating them, and that's why the Koch brothers are after her. But your real question is, can Bernie Sanders turn out the extra vote to close the gap? And it's quite clear that's not happening in South Carolina. South Carolinians have basically made up their mind. This is a Hillary Clinton state. Well, look forward to electing her.
They haven't voted yet, so we'll have to wait and see. Thank you both so much for this lively discussion. Look forward to having you back.
My pleasure. Good to be with you.
Good to be with you.
When awareness returns, our panel of voters is back. What issues are important to them? What will make the difference for them at the polls? Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Awareness. As we approach primary day for the Democrats, how confident are voters in their candidate? What issues matter to them? What will be the determining factor in how they cast their vote? This morning we have a variety of South Carolina voters, including college students, a professor, and the executive director of the Greater Columbia Community Relations Council. Thank you all for being with us this morning. We know how incredibly important the minority vote is and the young people vote, so it's certainly good to see all of you so active and engaged. But I want to start by asking, do you have a candidate you support? If so, who?
Yes, I support Secretary Hillary Clinton.
Okay. Lauren?
I'm still undecided.
I support Secretary Hillary Clinton.
I'm undecided.
And I know Ms. Baskins can't support a candidate, but
I support Secretary Clinton as well.
Okay, so vast majority of the students here are Democrats. Lauren, you're still undecided, but are you leaning Democrat?
Yes, I'm a Democratic voter. I'm just deciding between which candidate I want to support.
Okay, so why are you stuck? Why are you split right now?
I think at this point it's really kind of hard for me because, of course, history. If Hillary Clinton wins, it'll be the first woman in the White House. I'm a woman, I want to work in politics, so that'll be very inspiring for me. And of course, she has a lot of experience. But at the same time, Senator Sanders has this very revolutionary vibe to him. So that's kind of drawing me towards him. He wants to go in and make these big changes in Washington that we need right now. So at this point, I'm still kind of trying to figure it out.
And Omari, where do you stand in terms of your support with Secretary Clinton? Why are you supporting her?
Well, for one, the main reason is that Secretary Clinton, she has the most practicable ideas, the most practicable solutions to these issues. And not only that, but she doesn't focus on just one issue. She has practicable solutions for a variety of things, for education, as it relates to criminal justice reform, healthcare, different issues. So her ideas are much more practicable, and not only that, but she's more experienced. The things that she can bring to the table based on her experience as Secretary of State, as a U.S. Senator, as a First Lady, not just of the United States, but also of Arkansas. She's also an attorney. So she's very qualified and learned, so she knows what it takes to get the job done. And she has done it in the past. Just look at the record. The record speaks for itself when you compare both candidates. So it's really no choice. It's just Hillary.
Well, are there any ideas that Bernie Sanders has that you think, those might be good ideas? I don't know how he'd pay for them, but I think they're great ideas.
Actually, both Senator Sanders and Hillary, they have a lot of similar ideas, but the crux of it really comes to how you're going to get it done. It's good to dream big and say, yes, I want to have free college tuition for everybody. That's absolutely fine. I'm a college student. We love it.
You would love
Believe
that,
me,
yeah.
we would love it. But how are you going to get it done? Because initially, he said, he's not going to raise taxes, but then he says, we're going to raise taxes for the middle class a little bit just to pay for this. So I'm not really sure where he stands on actually, coming through with these grand ideas, which is quite fine. But Secretary Clinton, she has real solutions, and that's why I'm supporting her.
Right. And Andy, you were shaking your head over there. Tell me about why you're supporting your candidate.
I'm supporting Hillary Clinton because of two reasons. I'm a big fan of education and of foreign policy. And in my opinion, I think Hillary Clinton is the only candidate with a strategic plan for foreign policy, not only because she was the Secretary of State, where she traveled more than any other Secretary of State, but with her campaigning and the plan that she's done, I think that is the only logical plan between all the candidates, both sides, Democratic and Republican. And on education, I think it's very important that the government begins to really invest in education. Across states with Republican governors, you're starting to see governors take out of education, which means that the money has to come from the federal government. And I really enjoy to see that Hillary Clinton has the $25 billion invested in HBCUs alone.
And Dr. Ivey, how does it make you feel when you see students so actively engaged in the political process?
I enjoy that. I was one of the few faculty members that supported Barack Obama when he initially ran, and I was a faculty member at the other institution of South Carolina State when I was a professor there, now a professor at Claflin. But I enjoy that students start to look at the issues and start to realize that they have to take ownership in their country and the issues that are going to affect their future. And that's why I try to stay out of exactly who I'm going to vote for, even though I really have made up my mind. But I tell my students that I'm undecided because I don't want my influence to sway them.
Well, let me just ask you, generally speaking, without saying who you're going to support, but do you look at history as part of a reason why you might cast a vote? For example, in 2008, people were voting for Barack, some people because, hey, he'll be the first African-American president. That's why I want to support him, maybe not so much because of issues. But for you, is it issue-driven or is it gender politics? How do you feel about that?
I feel as though it could be a little bit of both, but for me, it's issue-driven. I like someone who has a solid plan. You can feed me ideas every day. My friends, they do the same as well, but if they don't have a plan to back it up, I don't really take them as serious as I would someone who gives me facts and who gives me at least a starting point of how you're going to implement your policies and give me numbers. I like how Hillary Clinton, with the education issue, she's giving a set amount of dollars to the education system. You know, we're $1.21 trillion in student loan debt, so it's like, how are we going to take care of that? You can't just tell me, oh, make college education free, but how are you going to do
more substance behind
that?
that.
More substance behind it, because it's like you're putting a bigger debt because some colleges are already in debt. So it's like, how are you going to help them get rid of that by placing more debt on them?
And Ms. Baskins, just talk a little bit about the importance of voter turnout. We know how incredibly important it is for voters to get out there on the 27th.
Absolutely. In the Midlands, in recent elections, we've had as low as 12% voter turnout. That's atrocious. And it really, really sounds good listening to these youngsters here intelligently talk about why they want to vote for their choice. It is imperative that we get out and vote. Not only the youngsters, but there's some people who've gotten settled with, oh, I don't need to vote because they're going to do what they want to do. No, you need to go. And you need to not just pull one candidate because someone told you in sound bites that's who you need to vote for.
Do your research.
Yes.
Well, I've certainly enjoyed this discussion. I know we could go on for hours and for days, but thank you for sharing your perspectives. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
When awareness returns, celebrities hit the campaign trail for their candidates and to raise awareness about voting.
To give up your voice is basically to let other people steamroll you. To let just people do, if you don't take part, then you can't complain when the world's not what you want it to be.
More from my interview with actor Jason George and activist Cornel West next. Welcome back to Awareness. It hasn't been just candidates on the campaign trail. Celebrities, civil rights leaders, political activists, and other well-known figures have pledged support to help their candidate become the next president. I recently sat down with actor Jason George, who supports Hillary Clinton. I'm here with Jason George. You probably recognize him from a lot of different TV shows and movies, most recently and currently on Grey's Anatomy. It's so good to have you here.
Well, thank you for having me.
Now, first question, we've had a lot of celebrities coming through on the campaign trail. Why did you decide to get involved in politics? Why are you bringing Hillary's message here to South Carolina?
Well, I mean, I think the question would really be, why aren't you involved in politics? Everybody should be using their voice, their vote, you know what I mean, to try and make the country more of what you want it to be. And that's really what it's about for me. I mean, part of it was, some of the gun violence that we've had of late, for me, Hillary was one of the first ones to actually speak out on it. And she's put forward a lot of different things, and I think she's done a lot of things over the course of her entire career that have spoken to me both as a, as a black man and a father, that I think she's doing things to move the country in the direction that I'd like to see it going.
And what do you say to young people who, maybe are starting to just now get involved in politics and about being engaged and staying engaged in the process, not just, for the primary or for the general election, but constantly?
Don't sell yourself out. It's, to give up your voice is basically to let other people steamroll you, to let just people do, if you don't take part, then you can't complain when the world's not what you want it to be. Some things happen, other things we let happen. And so, racism happens. But, if you don't try and actively elect people who fight racial profiling, who fight for, money for, fight income inequality, those sorts of things, then you're letting those things continue to happen. Right. So you've got to be part of the change you want to see happen. I mean, Obama said it first, and I'm just trying to make sure people remember it. Right.
And what to you really separates her from the other Democratic candidate, from Bernie Sanders? Experience,
to be perfectly honest. I mean, for me, it comes down to, when we get to the general election, right now in the primaries, everybody plays nice because more or less, we all are on the same page about a lot of things. Now, one may be more extreme in how far they want to go, but and one may have what I think are more workable plans. But they're basically on the same page. When we get to the general election, when it's a Democrat versus a Republican instead of two Democrats battling it out, it's going to get ugly. And when it gets ugly, then I need the candidate who's got the experience that's unassailable.
Jason George and I talked about a lot more than just politics. To watch the full interview, including what he credits for his success and how he pushes past struggles, go to our Awareness Facebook page. Cornel West, the scholar and social activist, has been making stops in South Carolina endorsing Senator Bernie Sanders. West has been a strong advocate for criminal justice reform and tuition-free education. He recently brought his message and support of Senator Sanders to South Carolina State University.
When Black America gets a chance to find out who Brother Bernie Sanders really is and know he's for real about fighting poverty, about fighting police murder, about fighting low-quality education, free education when it comes to college, they'll see, oh, how is it that we didn't know about him? But now you know.
West helped the Sanders campaign kick off its HBCU tour at SC State. Stay with us. We'll be right back with a final thought. Make your voice heard. Get out and vote. It doesn't matter which candidate you support as long as you exercise your right. If you give up that right, you are silencing yourself and letting others speak for you and make decisions that affect you. We'd like to thank all of our guests this morning. And don't forget, you can always weigh in on the discussion on our Awareness Facebook page. Until next time, I'm Megan Norman. This is Awareness.